Assalamualaikum everyone, welcome back to another video. This is Ibra. In this video, we will just here to improve our English listening skills, and the video is all about from BBC FM radio. So let's enjoy together and let's improve our English speaking at the same time listening skills.
I think her legacy internationally will be good. Locally, her reputation's gone.
She had quite the task in front of her. I think that she did marginally okay. I'm not thrilled that we were put in lockdown for so long, but I don't know if anyone could have done it any better.
So, with a leadership contest in just 3 days' time, is there someone obvious waiting to take over? A question I asked to the New Zealand journalist Lloyd Burr.
Not really. There's not someone obvious at all. And you would have seen all of the Labor Party MPs going in and out of that retreat today, and they were just freaking out. They were really freaking out about this whole situation because they haven't had a leader which they've had, the whole country's united behind and the whole party's united behind until Ardern came along in 2017. But today when she announced that, all her MPs just looked like possums in the headlights. They were all kind of freaking out. And there is no obvious successor. And the way that the party works this far out from an election is that if 2/3 of the Labor Party caucus can unite behind one candidate, then that candidate will become the new Prime Minister, they will become the new leader of the Labor Party. But if they can't, then it goes into this, which is pretty much going to be a dogfight. So it could get very messy if 2/3 of the Labor Party MPs can't unite behind one person. And at this stage, we don't know if there is a person that they're uniting behind. There's some names, but it is certainly early days. There's no standout contender though.
Back in 2017, the party did unite behind her. Jacinda Ardern was the darling of the political world. What went so wrong?
Yeah, she was the saviour of the party and the reluctant Prime Minister. She didn't want to be the Prime Minister, but she was the deputy leader of the Labor Party and they were doing really bad in the polls, and so the leader saw how well she was doing in the polls personally, and so he stood aside. And this was just 7 weeks out from the election. And so he stood aside, she became the leader, and in just 7 weeks, Jacinda Mania, we called it, it took hold of the country and she became so popular, but she didn't have an exit plan for COVID. So while she had a landslide victory in the 2020 election, when there was no COVID in New Zealand, when COVID finally arrived, that's when it started coming undone. And she went from being the most popular Prime Minister we've ever had under the proportional representation system to being really bad in the polls. And she would have seen the writing on the walls over the last couple of weeks and realised that maybe it's better to bow out now with dignity instead of losing at the election, which is probably what would have happened.
Lloyd Burr of Today FM in New Zealand. You're listening to the BBC World Service, and Gareth has our headlines.
Schools, trains and oil refineries across France have been affected, and large numbers of people are marching on the streets on the first day of protests and strikes against President Macron's plans to raise the retirement age. As millions of Chinese workers travel home for the Lunar New Year holiday, President Xi Jinping has said he's concerned about coronavirus spreading to the countryside. And many people have died in Afghanistan as a bitterly cold winter grips the country, with the temperature in the central province of Ghor plunging to minus 33 degrees last weekend.
The former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has warned that his country faces economic collapse if there's no early general election. Since being forced from office in a vote of no confidence last year, Mr. Khan wants to push the government to bring elections forward. Last week, he forced the shutdown of 2 regional assemblies, and he's vowed to hold more mass rallies despite being shot and wounded at an event in October. But critics say his tactics are only adding to Pakistan's economic woes. He spoke to our Pakistan correspondent, Caroline Davies.
The only way Pakistan could get economic stability is through free and fair elections. Free and fair elections where a government backed by a popular mandate, that's the beginning of getting economic stability.
But those elections are due to happen this year. What you are calling for is to have them earlier. What's the difference? It's just a few months, but the fact that you're doing this could cause further economic damage. Will you acknowledge that?
Actually, the damage has been done. It's only going to get worse. The longer this government stays, the worry in Pakistan is we could have a Sri Lanka type situation.
So what is your economic plan?
Number one, political stability. Number two, taking tough decisions like rule of law in Pakistan. Look, what brings in investors is good governance. Governance comes in through rule of law. At the moment, there is no rule of law.
There is still a threat hanging over you that you could be disqualified. What will you do if you are disqualified?
There is absolutely no case that can disqualify me.
Do you don't think it'll happen?
Well, they're trying their best because, I have so many court cases. They come up with every other day there's a new case against me, and I keep appearances in courts.
What would you do? Who would run the party? How would this operate if you were disqualified?
Well, we'll cross the bridge when we come to it.
You have the power to bring people out onto the streets, and you have the power to keep people off the streets, particularly if you don't get what you want, a general election at the time that you want, if you are disqualified. What is your aim here? Would you bring people out to protest if you don't get the agenda that you want to happen?
We will do public rallies. Of course, we're already in an election year, so we will do our public rallies, which is what political parties do.
There will be an election this year at some point. How safe do you currently feel?
Well, I don't feel safe. The answer is no, I don't feel safe. Thing is, yes, I'll be a little bit more careful. I will have a bulletproof screen now giving, rallies, but I will have to. There's no question of me sitting inside. I will go out campaigning.
Imran Khan speaking to Caroline Davies. Well, he was only sworn into office a few hours ago, but Germany's new defense minister, Boris Pistorius, is a very busy in-tray. He takes over following the resignation of his predecessor, Christine Lambrecht, at a time when Germany is under intense pressure to send battle tanks to Ukraine. Mr. Pistorius is meeting the U.S. Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, ahead of a wider meeting of defense officials on Friday to discuss sending more weapons to Ukraine. Speaking after taking his oath of office, he said he would strengthen Germany's armed forces.
Russland führt einen grausamen Vernichtungskrieg.
Russia is conducting a cruel war of extermination against a sovereign state, against Ukraine. Germany isn't a party to this war, but we are still affected by this war. Therefore, it's our task to now quickly make the German army strong. It's about deterrence, effectiveness, and deployability. And most importantly, it's about further supporting Ukraine, including with equipment from the German army.
Our Europe regional editor Danny Eberhard's here to tell us more. Danny, Mr. Pistorius has some very quick decisions to make. What does he face over Ukraine?
Well, the main one is that issue about German tanks. Germany produces Leopard 2 tanks, an advanced battle tank. It has its own supplies of these, but other countries also have them, other countries in the NATO alliance, so countries like Poland, Finland, Turkey. So Ukraine wants these tanks as part of a drive to get some 300 tanks, Western tanks, to try to push back Russian forces in the east and south of Ukraine. So far, it has had a few small pledges, but at the moment, at tomorrow's meeting in Ramstein, a US airbase in Western Germany, defense officials from Ukraine Defense Contact Group will be making calls on whether to send more advanced Western weapons. Germany has always approached this as saying it wants a collaborative approach, and one of the key things here is Germany seems to want the US to commit to supplying its advanced tanks, Abrams tanks, so that it would then give permission for Leopard tanks to be exported to Ukraine. The US has said it's not yet there at that point. It says that there's problems with maintenance with Abrams tanks. It's complex. So there are a number of things holding the US back on that front, and Germany wants to walk in lockstep with the US.
What do ordinary Germans think? Is there public support behind a decision to extend more weaponry to Ukraine?
Well, Germany's position obviously is quite nuanced. Amongst the German public, there's very broad support for supporting Ukraine, but when it comes to the issue of delivering heavy weapons, the support is less. So it's worried. A lot of Germans are worried about it providing an excuse for Russia to escalate the conflict. There is a further warning on this point from the Kremlin today. Dmitry Peskov, President Putin's spokesman, has said that such a provision of advanced weapons would prove an extremely dangerous situation, and it could bring the conflict to a whole new level.
Danny, thanks for taking us through that. Danny Abrahard, our Europe regional editor. Israeli forces have shot dead 2 Palestinians thought to be a civilian and an armed militant during an arrest raid in the occupied West Bank. 17 Palestinians have been killed there in less than 3 weeks. From Jerusalem, here's Tom Bateman.
Israeli forces raided Jenin refugee camp at dawn. They shot dead a senior Islamic Jihad militant when they said Palestinian gunmen fired at them. They also killed a 57-year-old teacher who Palestinians say had gone to give first aid to the fatally wounded man. Israel's army hasn't yet answered questions about that. It is the latest in a campaign of search, arrest and intelligence-gathering raids that intensified last April as violence spiked between Israelis and Palestinians. The visit of the US National Security Advisor is the first of the region of a top US official since Benjamin Netanyahu returned to office, leading the most right-wing coalition in Israel's history. It's likely he'll be looking for assurances to see what boundaries, if any, the Prime Minister can place on the far-right ultra-nationalists now sitting as senior ministers, especially after the new government claimed exclusive Jewish rights to all the land, including the occupied West Bank.
Tom Bateman in Jerusalem. Now Gareth has some of the other stories we've been looking at.
There's been further unrest during another day of anti-government protests in Peru. 2 people were shot dead in the southern town of Macasani, where demonstrators set fire to a police station, forcing officers to flee. Demonstrators from southern regions have meanwhile poured into the capital, Lima. A North Korean defector elected to parliament for South Korea's governing Conservative People's Power Party has announced his bid to join the party's leadership council. Tae Yong-ho told journalists his membership would be what the North Korean leader's Kim Jong-un would be most afraid of. Mr. Tae had served as second in charge of Pyongyang's embassy in London before defecting in 2016. And the authorities in Armenia are investigating the deaths of 15 soldiers killed in an overnight fire at their barracks in the east of the country. State media said the servicemen, part of a company of military engineers, had breached orders against using petrol to light a stove in their barracks. The defence minister has said that a major general has been dismissed over the incident.
Decades passed since the largest ever outbreak of the Ebola virus, which killed more than 11,000 people in West Africa. The 3 main countries affected were Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea, where the outbreak started. It left around 20,000 children without one or both of their parents. The BBC's Caroline Loye has been to meet 2 teenagers in Western Guinea to find out how they managed to cope with the loss of their parents at such a young age and the stigma that Ebola carried within their community.
The sound of normality. 16-year-old Kadiatou is preparing lunch with the foster family at their home in Forécaria. She's full of smiles now, but in 2015, her world collapsed when Ebola tore through her family.
I've lost 11 family members,
all in the space of a few weeks. The Ebola outbreak in West Africa started here in Guinea at the end of 2013 before spreading to Liberia and Sierra Leone. In 3 years, 11,000 people died and more than 20,000 children lost one or both of their parents. Kadiatou was just 9 years old when her parents died from the virus. Kadiatou had contracted Ebola at the same time as her parents. She was alone and terrified.
People would say that if you go to the hospital, they will sell you, they will kill you. But if you take the medicine, you will die. So I would refuse to take the medicine.
Then came along a volunteer at the hospital called Mama Isata. Ebola had taken her husband, one of her children, and almost her as well. She wanted to make sure that patients were listening to medical advice so they too had a chance of survival. She managed to convince Kadiatou to take her medicine and eat. Days later, Kadiatou was out of hospital and ready to go home. She was desperate to be with her siblings and then devastated to be told she couldn't. Despite her recovery, some members of her family insisted she was still contagious and refused at the time to allow her back. 8 years on, the pain for Kadiatou is still raw. It was Mama Isata who gave her a home, along with 4 other orphans.
When I took in these children, it was difficult because they were always thinking about their parents. It was hard, but I was able to comfort them because I went through the same thing.
In the region of Forêt-Carrière alone, Ebola left hundreds of orphans, like Ibrahima, who lost 5 members of his family. Ibrahima was 12 when he was taken in by his grandmother. He's 19 now, but he still seems really vulnerable.
People wouldn't come near me. They would even back away. Even my friends here didn't want to play with me.
Today in the community, beliefs have changed. Ibrahima says he no longer lives in shame, but the memory of his parents is always with him. A heavy absence, but he tells me he's now hopeful for the future.
I want to finish studying to then help my grandmother the way she helped me. Because she's my mother and my father. She's my everything.
Caroline Loyer. A reminder of our top story. In France, large numbers are marching on the streets on the first day of protests and strikes against plans to raise the retirement age. You're listening to the newsroom on the BBC World Service. I'm Celia Hatton.
This is the BBC World Service explaining the complex stories behind the headlines.
Roe v. Wade and women's rights to abortion in America.
So this was the case of somebody who in the legal courts was known as Jane Roe, and in 1970 she went to the courts and she said Texas bans abortion, but I want to be able to have an abortion, and it went through the court system.
What was the result of Roe v. Wade?
Effectively what it meant was that abortion became safe and legal.
In what ways did Roe v. Wade develop throughout different states after that ruling?
It became an electoral strategy.
The power that the Supreme Court could wield over the everyday lives of American citizens was demonstrated in 2022.
The Supreme Court did indeed overturn a woman's federal right to have an abortion, and it gave the states the right to make those decisions.
The explanation, Saturday at 5:30 GMT. Coming up on the BBC World Service.
All the people in my life who need to know.
It seems like a shame not to be more open about it.
Some jobs require a lot of discretion, including that of cookbook author, if it's not your name on the cover. 2 ghostwriters share the secrets of their trade. What does it really take to produce a recipe book bestseller? That's The Food Chain with me, Ruth Alexander, after the news.
BBC News with Gareth Barlow. Large numbers of people are marching in cities and towns across France on the first day of protests and strikes against President Macron's plans to overhaul the pension system. 2/3 of the French population opposes plans to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. China's President Xi Jinping has said he's concerned about the spread of coronavirus as millions of people travel home for the Lunar New Year holiday. State media said he stressed efforts to improve medical care in rural areas. More than 70 people have died in Afghanistan as freezing temperatures sweep across the country. The central province of Gore recorded minus 33 degrees last weekend. Local reports put the number much higher. Russia's Internal Security Service, the FSB, has opened a criminal case against an unnamed US citizen accused of spying. Relations between Moscow and Washington have plumbed new depths in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Somali National Army says it's killed almost 50 Islamist militants in a reprisal raid in the centre of the country. It said Thursday's raid had been supported by international partners and local militia. The United Nations is stepping up patrols in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Close to 200 civilians have been killed in 6 weeks of clashes between the Lendu and Hema communities. The Lebanese currency has sunk to a new low of 50,000 Lebanese pounds to $1. The latest fall comes as politicians fail to elect a new president for the 11th time. And at least 2 people have died and dozens more have been injured in Iraq in a crush of football fans ahead of the final of the Gulf Cup in Basra later today. It's the first time that the regional football tournament has been held in Iraq for decades. World News from the BBC.
There are lines of work shrouded in secrecy.
All the people in my life who need to know.
Jobs existed.
I feel like it breaks the illusion a little bit.
This is the Food Chain from the BBC World Service with me, Ruth Alexander, and today we're introducing you to the Ghost Writers.
It seems like a shame not to be more open about it.
The people who write the cookbooks you read, but whom you've probably never heard of. Is it the case, sometimes, that there may be a chef with their name and their face on the cover, but there will be recipes inside that they haven't come up with, they haven't even tasted?
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely.
Absolutely.
In this program, we're going to get a glimpse behind the scenes.
I was just in shock for several hours after receiving these recipes.
To find out what it really takes to come up with a bestseller for your kitchen shelf.
It's mostly diplomacy and sometimes getting them to do things that they don't want to do.
They don't necessarily want to share all their best recipes, right? The secret sauce.
Let's meet the Ghost Writers.
I'm JJ Good, and I help chefs with their cookbooks.
JJ lives in New York, and sometimes he gets his name on the cover of the books he writes, even twice winning the prestigious James Beard Award for his work. But other times his involvement is much more low-key.
Hi, I'm Signe Johansen. I've written several books of my own, and I've also worked with other chefs and big brands on their books.
Signe is Norwegian-American, living in London. It was early in her career that she took a number of ghostwriting jobs. Today she publishes her own recipe books, including Solo, The Joy of Cooking for One. So, what is a cookbook ghostwriter?
That's a great question. I guess the ghost suggests that you can't see them, or that you can only see their outline occasionally, but it's someone who helps a chef with the long, arduous, inscrutable process of writing a cookbook, which of course they sometimes think they.
So thank you so much for hearing FM radio, which is all about BBC.